I was pouring tea for the notary when the police knocked on my door. The notary froze pen mid-air. I looked up confused. It was just supposed to be paperwork routine. I had no idea that at that very moment my entire life was being rewritten without my consent. When I opened the door, there were 3 officers. One of them was holding a sealed envelope. The other had a recording device already rolling. "Mrs. Cora Halstead?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," I said, slowly glancing back at the notary. "What's going on?" "You've been served a court order for emergency guardianship. Effective immediately, your daughter-in-law, Emily Halstead, has full legal and medical decision-making authority over your person. You are no longer permitted to make binding legal decisions." I blinked. The notary stood up slowly. "This is a mistake," I said. "There's been no hearing. No judge would allow that without—" "There was a private hearing this morning," the officer said. "You were declared mentally incompetent based on submitted medical evidence and digital testimony." From who, I asked. He read from the file. "Emily Halstead and Michael Halstead, your son." It was like a vacuum sucked the air out of the room. Behind them, an ambulance was pulling into the driveway. A stretcher rolled down its ramp. "You can't do this," I said. "I'm not sick. I'm not confused. I just signed legal documents." The officer didn't flinch. "The judge's order overrides anything signed today." The notary looked lost. "Should I cancel the document?" "No," I snapped. "Witness it. I am fully competent." But it was too late. They walked in. They went through my drawers. They collected my medications, my files, even the laptop I'd been using that morning. I was escorted under supervision into a medical transport van. Emily arrived just as I was being loaded inside. She was calm, dressed in muted tones. A single tear clung to her cheek. "I'm sorry it had to be this way," she whispered. "But you weren't well. You've been confusing stories, calling people who passed away, saying strange things about me." "You're lying," I hissed. "You're stealing." She leaned in, smiled, and said, "And no one will believe you now. You're legally invisible." At the facility, I was taken to a private room. But this wasn't a hospital. It was a memory care unit, locked doors, cameras in corners, soft music playing constantly to soothe imagined paranoia. I wasn't allowed to use a phone. I wasn't allowed to have visitors without pre-approval. I wasn't allowed to access my own bank statements. My entire life was being rewritten in real time based on digital lies. The nurses were gentle, assuming I was confused. They called me sweetheart. One of them gave me crayons instead of a pen when I asked to write a letter. I wasn't confused. I was being imprisoned inside a false diagnosis, and I knew who was behind it. Emily. She had done this. The question was, how? I didn't have long to wonder, because 4 nights into my stay, while I was pretending to sleep, I overheard a call between one of the nurses and someone she called the family contact. It was Emily, and what she said chilled me to my bones. "I just need another week. After that, the power of attorney becomes permanent. Then we liquidate. Trust account access gets transferred. I already have the digital voice model to finish any unsigned paperwork. It'll sound like her, look like her, and no one will know." "I'm sorry," the nurse replied. "Did you say digital voice?" "That's right," Emily said casually. "Deepfake AI. It's all set. We've already cloned her voice using phone recordings from years back. Even her video gestures. There's software for that now. We just need to hold her until the last piece is in place." I stopped breathing. They weren't just erasing me. They were building a version of me to replace me digitally, legally, permanently. They had a version of my voice, my signature, my face, all digitally forged. And in 7 days, that fake version of me would sign away my life, and no court would question it. Because as far as the law was concerned, I was no longer mentally competent to object. I lay there in that dim room, the smell of hand sanitizer in the air, my heart pounding harder than it had in decades. Emily had gone further than anyone imagined possible, but she'd made one mistake. She assumed I had no way out. She assumed I hadn't prepared. She assumed I hadn't seen this coming. She was wrong, because I had a secret, something hidden deep inside the walls of my home, something she never found, something her fake version of me could never know existed. A camera, a silent witness to everything, a backup system with no cloud, no Wi-Fi, and no way to be tampered with from the outside. And I wasn't going to beg for my life. I was going to take it back. Emily wasn't always a villain, or at least I didn't see her that way. When Michael brought her home for the first time, she was quiet, observant, a little shy, but not the fake kind. She seemed like someone trying to get things right. She wore navy blue slacks, a crisp white blouse, and barely their makeup. Her handshake was firm, and her eyes didn't dodge mine. I appreciated that. "I've heard a lot about you," she said. "Good things," I hope I replied, smiling. "All the best things." That's how it started, with warmth. Michael seemed happy around her, softer, like he didn't have to pretend anymore. After years of grieving his father, of building a tech startup from scratch, and nearly losing it twice, Emily was like a calm harbor. She listened when he spoke, really listened. She brought him chamomile tea after long nights of coding. She organized his chaotic apartment. She made sense of his world. I admired her for that. More than admired, I was grateful. Michael and I had always been close. We weren't just mother and son. We were teammates. After my husband died, we clung to our shared sense of logic, our routines, our need to control the chaos. It took me years to stop waking up at 3 a.m. in cold sweat, thinking I forgot to send a mortgage payment or check the gas line. Emily changed that. She was different but grounding. When they got engaged, I gave them the deed to my lake cabin as a gift, for future vacations, or income if you want to rent it. They cried. Emily hugged me so tight I could feel her heart pounding. She called me Cora, but with a kind of reverence, like it mattered. During the wedding planning, she invited me to every vendor meeting. Not out of obligation, she wanted my opinion. She even asked me to write the blessing reed during the ceremony. On their second anniversary, I gave them something I thought no one else ever would: a copy of Michael's childhood videotapes I'd digitized. Emily cried harder than he did. She called it the most precious archive she'd ever seen. "I want to build our own story like this," she whispered to me. "You're a part of it." We started having Sunday breakfasts, just the two of us. We'd sit in her minimalist kitchen, sipping espresso, flipping through catalogues of modern art or niche documentaries. She was always curious about how I thought. One day she asked me, "How did you make it all work?" "What do you mean?" "You built a life from nothing, raised a son alone, managed every cent without debt, never panicked." "That's power, Cora." I laughed. "That's called necessity." She didn't laugh back. She just nodded. "Still, I watch you. I take notes." Looking back, I think that was the first red flag. But at the time, it felt like admiration. When Michael's company hit a growth spurt, things changed quickly. He offered to renovate my house, turn it into a dual-level home where they could live on the main floor, and I'd move into a newly designed in-law suite above the garage. Emily designed it herself: clean lines, soundproofed walls, modern fixtures. "It'll give you independence, but keep you close," she said. I was touched. We sold the lake cabin to finance the construction. I didn't mind. I was downsizing anyway. I wanted to feel useful, part of their world. After moving in, I started noticing how meticulously Emily organized everything. Calendars, chore apps, shared spreadsheets. She kept digital files on groceries, birthdays, warranty expirations, even my own medications. It was efficient, but intense. Still, I overlooked it. I wanted peace. When I had a small health scare, a brief drop in blood pressure that landed me in the ER for a night, Emily was the one who stayed by my side. Not Michael. She brought books, slippers, even reorganized my insurance binder while I was asleep. "I want to make sure you never have to worry," she said. I believed her. I gave her my power of attorney temporary. I thought just to manage some bills while I recovered. She called it just paperwork. I called it trust. She began managing things slowly at first. Grocery lists, medication refills, scheduling my appointments. At one point, she even arranged for a housekeeper to help once a month without asking. When I pushed back gently, she looked hurt. "I thought I was helping." "You are," I replied. "Just maybe check in with me first." She smiled and nodded, but I saw something behind her eyes. Not hurt. Calculation. Still, I said nothing, because every time I questioned her, she gave more. More comfort, more efficiency, more of herself. She made me feel like I was indispensable. And when Michael got promoted to CTO and started traveling more, I became her companion again. We watched obscure French thrillers, played logic games. She even taught me to use a smart planner app. One evening, she poured me a glass of red wine and said, "You know, you're not just Michael's mother. You're the architecture of this family. That's why I've built everything to match your standards." It felt like the highest compliment I'd ever received. I didn't realize what she was really doing. She wasn't building around me. She was mapping me. Every word, every routine, every vulnerability. She was constructing a blueprint of me, not to protect me, but to replace me. The first real crack didn't come from a fight. It came from a calendar update. I received a push notification from the shared family planner app. It read, "Neurological evaluation, Dr. C. Park, 11:30 a.m. Wednesday. Transport arranged. No action needed." At first I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't scheduled any neurological appointment. And I certainly hadn't agreed to transport. I walked downstairs, phone in hand. Emily was making tea, perfectly calm. "What's this about a neurologist?" I asked. She didn't even look surprised. "It's just a routine screening. The insurance company suggested it after your ER visit." "I'm not having memory issues," I said. "Of course not," she replied smoothly. "But it's better to have a record. You know how the system works. Prevention is the new cure." Something about her tone made my chest tighten. A week later, she accidentally switched out my vitamin pills. Instead of the ones I always took clearly labeled in a container I'd organized for years, I found new capsules in a sealed pack I didn't recognize. "Where are my vitamins?" I asked. Emily smiled. "I had the pharmacist update your stack. These are more efficient. Magnesium, zinc, mild cognition support, blend everything you need. No fillers." I didn't remember authorizing that, or visiting the pharmacy, or seeing any new prescriptions. Later that week, I caught her scanning one of my handwritten journal pages using her phone. When I asked her why, she said, "Just archiving. You have such a beautiful way of phrasing things. I want to preserve it." But she wasn't scanning for sentiment. She was training something. My smart speaker began acting strangely. One evening, I asked it to play a Chopin playlist, and it responded, "Cora, I'm not sure I understand. Can you try again?" It had never used my name before. Another time, it answered a question before I finished speaking with a full sentence I never said out loud. As if it had already predicted me. I unplugged it that night. The next morning, it was reconnected. Emily claimed the cleaner must have plugged it back in, except I hadn't told anyone I unplugged it. Soon, Michael started asking odd questions. Do you remember what day it is? Where did you put your car keys yesterday? What's your street address again? At first, I thought it was a joke, a mental exercise. But he was writing my answers down. Later, I found a file on the family laptop left open by accident labeled Observation Log. Cora H. Inside were daily entries. Some true, some twisted. July 6th. Forgot time of breakfast club meeting, actually an hour late. July 7th. Seemed disoriented when I asked about her high school name, paused for 4 seconds. July 9th. Confused TV remote with garage opener. None of these things had happened the way they were described. And even the ones that were technically true had explanations. I'd paused because I was searching for the name of a teacher, not the school. I'd swapped remotes because I was moving them into a drawer. But on paper, it looked like the early stages of cognitive decline, and Michael, my son, was compiling them like data points. Then the lights in my unit began flickering randomly. When I mentioned it to Emily, she raised a brow and said, "Are you sure the electrician checked everything last month?" I hadn't seen an electrician, and that's when I checked the home security app Michael had installed. My access code had been changed. I confronted Emily. "You reset my system. It was for safety," she said. "You forgot to lock the door twice last week." "No, I didn't." She looked at me like I was a child. "It's okay, Cora. These things happen. That's why we're here." I stared at her. "What exactly are you trying to prepare for?" She didn't blink. Transition? The word hung in the air like a toxin. That night, I unplugged every digital device in my unit. My tablet, my speaker, even the smart lamp Michael gave me for Christmas. I pulled the SIM card from my phone. I moved all physical journals and documents to the one place Emily hadn't touched, a false wall panel in the back of my closet. Something I'd built myself years ago to store sentimental letters. And most importantly, I checked the clock. The antique grandfather clock at the edge of the hallway between our units. My husband had gutted it years ago and built a silent surveillance system inside, hidden behind the chimes. It wasn't connected to the internet. It was powered by an isolated loop recording on a local drive every 24 hours. I opened the panel. The red indicator was still blinking. Emily didn't know. She still didn't know, and that meant I still had time. It was like being slowly rewritten. Each week, a piece of my independence was erased not with cruelty, but with polite, professional precision. Emily didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She didn't even raise her voice. She simply rerouted reality around me, one invisible wire at a time. It began with my banking access. I tried logging into my retirement account and got a 2-step verification prompt. The recovery number had changed. Emily's voice drifted from the kitchen later that day. "Don't worry, Cora. I've consolidated your accounts for easier management, less risk of confusion." I hadn't authorized that. But by the time I asked Michael, he said, "It's temporary. We're protecting your assets." From whom? Me. Then my driver's license went missing. I kept it in a small accordion folder with my other documents. One day it was gone. I turned the entire unit upside down. I asked Emily. Her response was a masterclass in feigned concern. "Oh dear. You didn't lose it again, did you? You've been misplacing things more often." I hadn't lost it. I never lose things. That night, I found a letter in the recycling bin downstairs. A Department of Motor Vehicles notification addressed to me confirming cancellation of my license due to medical concerns submitted by a family physician. A physician I had never seen. At the next family dinner, which I wasn't invited to but heard from upstairs, I overheard Emily casually explaining to their guests why I didn't drive anymore. "She's just not herself these days. We're trying to keep her safe." They nodded sympathetically. I wanted to scream. Instead, I waited and documented. Then came the medication swap. She replaced my carefully curated daily regimen basic supplements I had been taking for years with pre-sorted blister packs labeled with my name, and a pharmacy I didn't recognize. When I took one to my own doctor, secretly during a brief window when I escaped for an appointment, he raised an eyebrow. This combination is sedative, low dosage but enough to dull alertness. Did you ask for this? No, I hadn't. I flushed the remaining pills the moment I got home. The next morning, a fresh pack was waiting by the sink. I tried using my phone to search for legal options, conservatorship reversal, elder abuse laws, hidden recording consent in my state. My browser history was wiped within hours. My bookmarks vanished. The Wi-Fi blocked legal resource websites. I installed a VPN. 2 days later, my tablet bricked, locked out, password reset. Michael's voice when I confronted him was firm but gentle. Mum, we found some confusing search terms on your browser. Emily thought you might be panicking. She locked it down until we can talk to someone. I was being digitally gagged. One afternoon, I went to the community library to use a public terminal. When I tried logging into my personal cloud account, where I had years of tax forms, records, journals, even audio messages from my late husband, the system told me the account had been suspended due to a terms of use violation. I contacted support. After an hour on the phone, they confirmed the account had been flagged for uploading manipulated identity documents. I had uploaded no such thing, but Emily had. She had used my own cloud to submit fake documents under my name so that I would be locked out. She was erasing me at the institutional level. I began receiving packages I didn't order: adult diapers, memory loss workbooks, beginners' watercolor kits labeled for seniors with dementia. Michael would appear at my door every few days, holding one up. Emily thought you'd enjoy this. It's good to keep your hands active. I didn't ask for that. She's just trying to keep your brain sharp. One day, he dropped off a framed sign that read, "You are safe. This is your home." I didn't hang it, so Emily did right outside my bathroom. One night, I noticed a blinking red light on the ceiling of my unit. A new camera. I stood on a chair to inspect it. It was real, mounted with fresh adhesive. When I confronted Emily, she didn't deny it. "It's not recording audio," she said with a calm shrug. "Just general activity, for safety. Elder falls are common, and we need to prove we're doing our due diligence." I ripped it off the ceiling. 3 days later, 2 new ones appeared. Smaller, harder to reach. I stopped changing clothes outside the bathroom. At a mandatory checkup with a neurologist, Emily had arranged Dr. Clifford Park. I was told I'd undergone cognitive assessment via my voice samples. "I don't recall recording any voice tests," I said. Dr. Park frowned. "The file we received was time-stamped 2 weeks ago. You answered a series of standard memory and reasoning questions. You were cooperative and expressive." I stared at him. "I never did that." He hesitated. "It was a video. The voice, the mannerisms. It was you." My heart dropped. They were using deepfake recordings to fabricate evaluations, and the medical system, the part that was supposed to protect me, had already accepted it. That night, I returned to the antique clock. I unscrewed the inner panel and slid out the external drive. I uploaded all video files to an offline flash. I printed transcripts. I sealed everything in 3 separate manila envelopes and labeled them. For lawyer, for journalist, for court. Then I did the one thing I hadn't done in years. I called someone from before Emily. Not a neighbor, not a friend. A retired intelligence consultant I had once helped during a case involving my late husband's employer. He owed me, and I was cashing it in, because this wasn't a family problem anymore. This was a digital coup, and I was preparing for war. He showed up wearing a delivery uniform, blue shirt cap clipboard. No logos, no questions. To anyone watching, he was just another guy dropping off a package. But I knew him as Aaron Marks, former cybersecurity specialist for an intelligence contractor, now semi-retired and working under the radar as a private digital forensic operative. He walked in, nodded once, and said, "You weren't exaggerating." I handed him the sealed drive from the antique clock. No words needed. He plugged it into a military-grade laptop. "I'll scan for corruption and authenticity markers." "You said it's not cloud-based." "No, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, just hard-loop storage." He looked impressed. "Your husband was smart." He was cautious. The footage loaded 63 hours of hallway recordings, timestamps, audio, uncompressed. Aaron isolated 3 sequences within minutes. Emily forging my signature on power of attorney extensions. Her speaking aloud to an AI assistant, feeding it voice samples and saying, "Let's adjust the tone to sound more hesitant, more elderly." A full confession buried in a call she thought was private. Once the deepfake passes probate review, it's over. Her lawyer will think she cancelled the trust. The new video makes her say she wants everything moved to Michael's business. She had digitally recreated me, not just voice, but full synthetic video. And in 48 hours, she would submit it to the court as proof that I had voluntarily surrendered all rights to my estate, my home, and any legal power to challenge her authority. Aaron leaned back. "We can blow this wide open, but we'll need 3 things." I nodded. First, he said we need a real-time integrity marker, a way to prove these videos weren't tampered with after the fact. "Fortunately, your clock system time-stamped everything to a standalone GPS-synced clock. That's a forensic goldmine." Second, we need to catch her doing one more thing live, something you can't fake. And the third, he looked me straight in the eye, you need to disappear for 24 hours. Emily thought she'd won. That morning, she called a family wellness hearing at the house. Michael was there. So was a caseworker from the state. All of them seated around the dining table with coffee and a plate of cookies. Emily projected my voluntary confession on the TV, a deep fake of me sitting stiffly saying in a slow, trembling voice, "I no longer trust myself with legal decisions. My daughter-in-law has shown me more consistency and care than I deserve. Please honor her decisions." The room was silent. Even Michael looked shaken, but he didn't speak. The caseworker took notes. Then Emily played a second clip, one showing me fumbling with pills, dropping them, forgetting what day it was. Except that clip wasn't real either. It had been generated using my own body data. Gestures, voice cadences, even blinking frequency. Software existed now to build a believable moment from static photos and short motion captures. Emily thought she'd covered every angle until the front door opened, and I walked in, live, real, unfaked. The caseworker gasped. Michael stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Emily's face went white. "I thought you were at the clinic," she whispered. "No," I said calmly. "I was with my husband's friend. You know, the one you said died in 2012. Turns out he's very much alive." Aaron followed me in, holding a portable projector. He said nothing, just placed it on the table and hit play. The first clip, Emily rehearsing my voice into an AI training app. The second, her scanning and altering my legal documents. The third, her phone call with a company specializing in elder identity simulation for remote legal compliance. Her words were exact. "As long as the voice model passes legal review, no one will know. She's already isolated. Her own son thinks she's slipping." The room fell silent. Then Aaron handed the caseworker a sealed envelope. Inside, a notarized statement of forensic chain of custody time-stamped footage and a real-time integrity hash tied to the GPS-synced camera. Legally unbreakable. Undeniably real. Emily broke. She stood up, palms flat on the table, eyes wild. "You think anyone will believe a paranoid old woman over me?" I've been her caretaker. I've handled her finances. I've cleaned up after her breakdowns. You staged those breakdowns, I said quietly. You manufactured a decline that never existed. You created a digital me to silence the real me. Michael looked between us. Emily, is this true? She laughed, short and bitter. Do you know how easy it is to erase someone over 60? All it takes is one flagged prescription, one missed bill, one bad clip. And boom, society assumes dementia. Aaron spoke for the first time. We already filed the footage with the state's cybercrime division. You're being investigated under Penal Code 368D felony level elder fraud and digital forgery. Emily went still. Then she ran, but she didn't make it far, because outside, waiting at the curb, was a woman in a dark blue windbreaker marked with 3 words. Attorney General's office. Emily, 18 months earlier. I never intended to erase her. When I first moved in with Michael, I admired Cora. She had that old-world sharpness, the kind that made you feel 10 steps behind in every conversation. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She remembered everything. People like that were dangerous, but brilliant. She was like a live archive, and I thought naively that she would become my ally. Instead, I became a guest in my own house. It started when I saw the financial ledgers. Michael had always said his mother handled things the old-fashioned way, but what I found was more than that. She had layered accounts, handwritten logs, off-grid investment files, and a literal wall safe that Michael didn't even know existed. She kept everything wills, deeds, prenuptial amendments, uncashed dividends, but none of it was digitized. One day, I asked if she wanted help setting up a cloud backup. Her response, real power isn't on the cloud. It's in knowing no one can reach what you control. That sentence burned into me, because I grew up the opposite. My mother died when I was 10. My father was a tax consultant with no patience for emotion. I learned spreadsheets before I learned how to drive. My family ran like a machine data in output, out error. Punishment. I was praised for being efficient, unemotional focused, but not loved. Never loved. So when I met Michael Warm, brilliant, chaotic Michael, I finally found someone who needed me. And when I met Cora, I found someone who reminded me exactly how close I always was to being dismissed again. She never said it aloud, but I saw it in her eyes. She didn't fear me. She didn't respect me. She tolerated me. The real shift came after Michael's accident. He slipped on an icy driveway coming home from work and was unconscious for 8 minutes. Nothing major, just a concussion, a wrist fracture. But something broke in me that night. I realized how little control I had. Michael's medical forms still listed Cora as his primary contact. She was still the joint account holder on half his portfolio. She still had access to his social security data, his medical records, his property lines. I had married into a system that I didn't control. Cora's hands were in everything, and no one questioned it because she was sharp, competent, wise. Even when she was wrong, people assumed she was right. So I studied her. I watched her speech cadence, her writing rhythm, her expressions. I installed passive monitors in our shared home security feed. Nothing illegal, just patterns when she opened doors, when she called her friends, when she forgot to water the plants. I catalogued it all. It wasn't about malice. It was about inheritance of power. I had no parents, no trust fund, no backup plan. Everything I was building with Michael could vanish the moment she changed one line in that yellowed will she kept in her closet. I wasn't going to risk it. When she got sick, just a minor blood pressure episode, I tested a theory. I managed her appointments, her mail, her reminders. She didn't notice, or if she did, she let it happen. That's when the idea started. If Cora no longer had legal autonomy, Michael and I could finally build our life without her in the center of every structure. I didn't think about what it would do to her. I thought about what it would protect. She could change the will at any time. She could revoke the joint ownership. She could legally override any plan I built. But if she was declared unfit, even temporarily, her authority would freeze. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was trying to survive her. The voice model came later, almost by accident. I had been training AI for freelance voice replication gigs, mostly for audiobook clients who wanted consistency. When I fed in some old voicemails Cora left me years ago, the match quality stunned me. That's when the logic flipped. Why should I wait for her to destroy my security? Why not build a version of her who agreed with me, one who wanted Michael to succeed, one who wanted the family to modernize, one who chose to hand off her legacy to us instead of threatening us with it? The courts didn't need coercion. They needed consent, and I could now manufacture it. Still, I didn't think she'd fight back. She was too proud, too convinced of her own intelligence. By the time she realized what I'd done, submitting conservatorship papers, transferring utilities, disabling her digital accounts, it was supposed to be too late. I wasn't counting on the clock. I wasn't counting on that camera. And I wasn't counting on the fact that despite everything, she still had allies I didn't know about. Now everyone will say I'm the monster. But I wasn't erasing her. I was trying to protect myself from someone who had the power to delete me without lifting a finger. Her name was Devon St. James. She wasn't a lawyer. She wasn't a detective. She wasn't even anyone Emily or Michael had heard of before. But I knew her. 32 years ago, Devon was a cybersecurity analyst in a joint research program my husband had helped fund through a Department of Defense innovation grant. She was the youngest mind in the room, 23 at the time, and the only one to call out my husband for storing unencrypted voice logs in an open-access archive. She saved his team from what would have been a multi-million-dollar breach. In return, he told her, "If you ever need something no one else can fix, call my wife." She never did, until now. And neither did I. I hadn't spoken to Devon in over 3 decades. But when Aaron reviewed the metadata in Emily's forged files, court documents, bank authorizations, even the deepfake training models, he spotted an anomaly. Some of these files aren't just fakes, he said. They're false authenticated, meaning they've been passed through a validation service to make them look digitally legitimate. The signatures aren't just forged, they're embedded with time-layered cryptographic keys. And only one group in the country had ever used that kind of forgery as a service, a black box firm operating under the name Vigil Synth. Devon had once told my husband over dinner, "If anyone ever tries to make you believe something that never happened, check who helped them build the lie." I called her using a burner line Aaron gave me. "Devon St. James speaking." I said nothing for a moment. "Then I'm Cora Halstead, wife of Mason Halstead. You once exposed a flaw in his IVRT voice shell. I think it's happening again, but this time I am the flaw they're trying to overwrite." A beat of silence. "Then send me the files. Tonight." Devon didn't come in person. She sent someone who didn't look like an agent or a hacker. She sent a grief counselor, a woman in her 50s, gentle eyes, neutral clothes. She introduced herself as Marla and said, "I'm here to talk about legacy and lies." She sat across from me in a cafe 3 blocks from my old quilting group, the one Emily thought I had given up. Marla opened a tablet and showed me a flowchart. On it were nodes marked Cora self-revoke move, voice sample, consent, form, final 3 PDF. Emily, transfer 98B asset. Lawyer approval, chain B. She tapped the last one. This one never passed through an actual attorney. It was validated using a document simulation tool licensed by a firm in Estonia, one connected to an identity laundering ring for corporate shell creation. "Are you saying Emily bought a lawyer?" "No. I'm saying Emily built a fake lawyer, submitted a request through a spoofed legal service interface, and created a closed approval chain that passed through 3 AI-verified signatures and 1 reused IP address. I blinked. Marla smiled softly. Someone taught her very well, but not well enough. That was when Devon called directly. Cora, listen carefully. You're not just dealing with fraud. You're dealing with a preemptive erasure campaign. These systems are designed to make any correction look like a contradiction. If you had tried to fix this through standard legal channels, you would have triggered a defense protocol. It would have made you look unstable for even asking questions. My throat tightened. What can we do? Devon said we rewrite the rewrite. Quietly, surgically. She laid out the plan. Reconstruct the forensic timeline anchored by unbroken footage from the hallway camera. Expose the fake legal chain, prove that Emily's digital attorney and signature flow was circular, not independent. Trigger an AI integrity audit through a whistleblower route, using data jurisdiction loopholes in a financial compliance bureau that still operated on paper records. Force a real human review, not an algorithmic one, by invoking something Emily forgot existed. A continuity override clause in Mason's original trust, designed to protect an heir from digital identity subversion. It had never been activated, until now. Devon didn't stop there. She reached out to a former contact, a data ethics journalist, working on a documentary called Synthetic Truth: The Deepfake Future of Consent. When the journalist reviewed Emily's archive, she was stunned. "This is the cleanest impersonation pipeline I've ever seen," she said. The only reason it failed Cora wasn't supposed to exist anymore. And so she set up an interview, not with me, with both versions of me side by side, real Cora and deepfake Cora, on national broadcast. That was the trap. The journalist asked both Cora the same question. What is the last thing Mason Halstead whispered to you before he died? The real me answered instantly. Finish what we started and don't let anyone bury it. The deepfake paused, then said, It's all yours now, sweetheart. That phrase didn't exist. It was plausible. But Mason had never called me sweetheart. Not once. It was something Emily said. And to anyone who knew Mason, that mistake shattered the illusion. Emily's synthetic empire cracked on camera. And now, everything she built on it, the conservatorship, the transfers, the legal control, began to unravel. Because someone from the outside had finally said, Wait, that doesn't sound like her. Let's rewind. Let's ask the version that can't be faked. The courtroom was full. Not with strangers, but with people who thought they knew me. Friends, neighbors, even my old book club. They had come thinking it would be a quiet dispute over guardianship, maybe a sad unraveling of a dignified woman no longer in control. Instead, they got a showdown. One version of me was seated behind the petitioner's table, projected onto a screen, lips slightly parted, waiting in programmed stillness. The other version, the real one, walked in wearing the same outfit, same posture, same earrings my husband gave me in 1985. The contrast was immediate, the silence electric. The judge, a silver-haired man with a reputation for zero tolerance for theatrics, blinked twice and said flatly, Is this some kind of demonstration? Devon, seated beside me in civilian clothes, stood. Your Honor, what you're about to see is not a demonstration. It is the result of a systematic attempt to digitally impersonate silence and disinherit my client. The judge frowned. You're claiming identity theft. Worse, Devon said. Identity replication? Emily was in the room, seated beside Michael. She didn't speak. Not at first. She didn't need to, because the screen version of me began to speak. I am Cora Halstead. I am of sound mind and body. I hereby relinquish my legal authority to Emily Halstead. Pause, Devon said. and the court technician stopped the playback. Your Honor, Devon continued. We'll now submit into evidence a comparative voice integrity scan, gesture analysis report, and AI synthesis origin trace. She handed the judge a thick binder. None of these statements were made by the woman present in this courtroom today. They were generated using synthetic modeling software, trained on years of voicemails, interviews, and digital ephemera harvested without consent. The judge skimmed the documents. This is real. Every second. And we can prove it. Devon tapped her tablet. The screen split. On one side, the AI Cora reading a scripted speech. On the other, me live answering the same questions. Same voice, different cadence, different breath pattern, different soul. The courtroom held its breath. Then Devon asked me a question that changed everything. What happened on July 17th, 1994? I answered without hesitation. My son nearly drowned at North Lake. I pulled him out, gave him CPR. He was 7. Then she turned to the AI version. Same question. The deepfake hesitated. Michael suffered heat stroke at no dehydration. The voice collapsed into a loop. The room erupted. Emily stood up. Finally. Her voice was quiet but sharp. This is insane. You're trusting a bunch of programmers over the people who've cared for her every day for 3 years. I changed her diapers when she was sick. I cooked her meals. I sat beside her hospital bed. Devon didn't respond. I did. You sat beside me, I said slowly, but not out of love. Out of calculation. Michael looked between us, face pale. Emily, tell me you didn't create that thing. Emily didn't answer, so Devon spoke instead. Mr. Halstead, we found invoices, paid in cryptocurrency, for advanced persona replication services, all traced to Emily's digital wallet. Michael sank into his seat. The judge cleared his throat. Do you have any explanation? Emily opened her mouth, then closed it, and smiled, the kind of smile that said, I already knew this would come. I was protecting the family, she said. If you think the law will punish me for trying to save a legacy from a woman who refuses to evolve, then go ahead. Let the world see what happens when you let people like her control everything forever. Devon replied, calm and brutal. No, Ms. Halstead. We're not here to debate the future. We're here to restore the present. One you tried to rewrite without permission. The judge reviewed everything, every recording, every cross-examination. Then he made it official. The court finds that the conservatorship filed under the authority of one Emily Halstead is hereby nullified due to demonstrable fraud impersonation and malicious intent. Emily was arrested at the courthouse doors. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked back once, not at me, but at Michael. And he couldn't even meet her eyes. Everyone thought the courtroom verdict was the end. That when Emily was escorted out in handcuffs and the judge signed the nullification order, justice had been served. But that was only part of it. Because I didn't just want my name back. I wanted the system that allowed this to happen to answer for itself. So I made one final move. A move I had been planning for months, quietly, methodically, with the same patience Emily once used against me. 2 weeks after the trial, I walked into a quiet office building in Sacramento and handed a sealed envelope to a man wearing a Department of Financial Protection and Innovation badge. He scanned it briefly, then asked, "Is this related to a probate fraud case?" "No," I replied. "This is about institutional negligence, patent abuse, and legal AI malfeasance." Inside the envelope was everything, not just Emily's forged documents, but the system logs from the AI-powered probate automation firm she used. She hadn't worked alone. Emily had exploited a legal tech startup called ClearPath Affidavit Solutions, which had offered a beta program for streamlined elder transitions. They advertised the ability to pre-generate power of attorney forms, simulate recorded consents, validate witness identity using AI matching, submit documents directly to e-notarization registries, all without ever needing the actual person present, as long as a verified voice model was on file. Which Emily provided. The kicker. ClearPath never once audited whether that voice model was real, and they had already processed over 700 elder surrender cases using the same flawed system, many of them in low-lit, high-wealth family disputes, where one party simply wanted the other's signature removed from the picture. Devon helped me decrypt their logs. Aaron helped me trace the payouts fees routed through shell billing structures back to trust funds controlled by heirs, not the elderly clients. I didn't just find my case, I found a pattern. So I filed a federal complaint under 18 U.S. Code, paragraph 1349, conspiracy to commit fraud, and added a class action trigger by contacting the families of 6 other victims who had since been placed into assisted living against their will, all through ClearPath. The story broke in 3 waves. Elder AI scandal deepfake tools, used to strip legal identity headline in the New York Times. Voice isn't consent. How synthetic signatures are quietly replacing real ones, feature in Wired. She got declared incompetent. Now she's taking the system to court, a viral expose on public media. Within a month, ClearPath Affidavit Solutions shuttered. Its founder was indicted. The California Attorney General opened a statewide audit of probate digitization protocols, and 3 major law firms joined my side in what they described as the first civil rights challenge of the AI legal integration era. But the real twist, I didn't stop with ClearPath. During discovery, Aaron uncovered something much darker. Emily's deepfake wasn't built from scratch. She had purchased a template, a pre-trained elder voice model from a data scraping company that used old voicemails, YouTube videos, and obituary tribute recordings to build aged personality banks. My voice had been scraped years ago, long before Emily ever married Michael. My story was never fully mine to begin with. They had already built me, just waiting for someone to pay for access. So I filed a second lawsuit, not for money, but for regulation, and for every woman like me who had been quietly erased by a system that valued speed over humanity, automation over evidence, simulation over consent. At the press conference, a reporter asked me, "Mrs. Halstead, what would you say to other older adults worried about being overwritten by technology?" I looked her in the eye and said, "Get smart, get loud, and get ahead. Because the moment you think, this could never happen to me, is the exact moment someone like Emily starts building your replacement." 3 months later, I planted tulips. Not because I had to, but because I could. My new home sits just outside Sonoma. Not the house Emily tried to take, not the suite above the garage, not even the old cottage I once sold to downsize. This one is mine again. No shared keys, no surveillance systems, no optimization apps. Just silence, birdsong, and real privacy. People think freedom feels like a thunderclap. It doesn't. It feels like waking up without having to prove you're real. Michael came to visit once. He brought coffee. Didn't say much. We sat on the porch in separate chairs. The air between us was heavy but not angry. I didn't know he said finally. "You didn't want to," I replied. He winced but didn't deny it. I thought, if we managed her stress, she'd stop controlling everything. "You thought managing me would make me disappear," I said gently. "You just let her find the tool to finish the job." He looked down at his hands. "I don't know how to undo it." "You don't." He nodded. "Then can I come back next week?" I said yes, but I made no promises, because forgiveness, like trust, is earned, not inherited. The settlement from the class action wasn't extravagant. I didn't ask for it to be. Most of it was structured into a fund supporting legal advocacy for digitally targeted elders people who didn't have secret cameras or friends in cybersecurity. I called it the First Voice Initiative. Its mission is simple: to protect the right to be heard by ensuring no one is digitally spoken for without consent. Somewhere out there, another Emily is training another voice. But next time, she won't go unnoticed. Next time, there will be firewalls and flashlights. I still keep the antique hallway clock. It's silent now, no recordings, no drives. But I like having it nearby. Not because I need to watch anyone, but because it watched me when no one else did. Sometimes people ask if I've returned to my quilting group. I haven't, but I've started writing instead. Longhand, essays, letters, fragments of memory that Emily's fake version of me would have never known. The texture of my husband's laugh, the smell of lemon oil on the bookshelf he built me, the sound of Michael's voice when he was 5, asking if you're my mum, who's God's mum. Things you can't simulate. Things no AI will ever fully understand. One evening, a reporter asked me on camera, if you could speak to the thousands of women who may be vulnerable to this kind of manipulation, what would you tell them? I didn't hesitate. You are not too old to be dangerous. You are not too quiet to be heard. And you are not too late to begin again.